On the inside of the huge copper dome of Griffith Park's planetarium, Laser Images presents the spectacle for which it's most famous, the Laserium show.
Laserium started in the early 1970s in Los Angeles at the Griffith Park Observatory, and this is when lasers first came out of the laboratory and became an art form. And the time, you can't even imagine, there was barely color TV, there were no computers or internet.
It's like the man behind the curtain.
Stephen Shapiro is the life behind the live show.
Is it a form of art? I mean, do you see
I think so, sure. Yeah, it's taking light and shooting it all over the place and bending it and twisting it.
They were lined up around the block, the shows sold out. This was something new.
Laserium is the only continuing laser concert in the world. The light source is a single 1-watt krypton gas laser. The tiny beam from this laser is refracted and projected by a series of electronic and optical devices to produce the effects you will see. But beyond its mechanics, Laserium is an experience. Its effect upon you depends upon what you bring to it. If you want entertainment or relaxation, you will likely find it.
If you seek inspiration or hidden significance, you may find it also. But if you want explanations and explicit meanings, they will not be there. Laserium is a trip through your imagination to where you've never been, and you're about to embark.
I was fortunate enough to be able to work with Charles Towns, who first had the ideas that led to the laser, and then in 1960 the first laser was invented, and I began my PhD under him in 1961. And so I was able to be doing my PhD on the second commercial sold laser. So I was really there at the very beginning to watch what happened with lasers. Lowell Cross was the first person to put together a public demonstration of laser light shows, and this was in 1968. There was sort of serious New York artwork going on, mixing together the art and the technology, and that's what originally got me involved. Billy Kluver was the person that started this, but he had been building engineering works with Jean Tinguely, a very famous New York artist, and had been working with Rauschenberg and various other artists.
When I first saw a laser, I was so totally blown away with the intensity and purity of that light that it has to be one of the peak experiences of my life.
It was Ivan Dreyer who brought laser art and contemporary music together. It was his vision. He's the man who started it all.
I embarked on my long journey back in 1948 when at the age of 9, my parents brought me here to Griffith Observatory, where I took a trip to the moon. I was overwhelmed by that experience and was inspired to become an amateur astronomer, eventually coveting a position at the observatory.
As a small boy, Ivan was always more curious than I think the rest of us. After his visit to the Griffith Observatory, he was obsessed with astronomy.
After applying for a number of years, I was finally hired in 1956 as a guide and was most privileged to work here on and off until 1968.
I remember a time when he presented me with a pencil sketch, and it was in black and white with a charcoal pencil, and I had been dabbling in some oil painting at the time, and he says, "Can you paint this for me?" I did, didn't think much about it. Thinking back, it was a very good representation of laser lumia, of the patterns that a laser light will make. Somehow that was in him, probably 15 years before the first laser light show. He also picked up a camera and started shooting stills. Right away, his stills would win first prizes at competitions. He had an eye for understanding that every picture had to tell a story, even in an abstract way. He also then naturally went into film. He studied at USC at a time when it was a hotbed of creativity, a bunch of young Turks who wanted to reinvent the business, didn't want to do things in the usual way. Francis Ford Coppola. Lucas was one of his classmates. John Williams was doing music over in the music department, and he would come by and sit in on camera lectures and editing lectures.
I actually had not considered working on art myself, but I had been very interested in art as a well-rounded student in the Ivy League. Even though I was majoring in physics, I sat in on a lot of art courses, and I learned a great deal about art, even though it never occurred to me I might do it myself. So I experimented and made what I called laser images, and I was really turned on by these.
It actually began in November of 1970 when I saw a demonstration of laser art at an expo at USC.
Fellow filmmaker Dale Pelton and I attended Experiments in Art and Technology, where a physicist by the name of Dr. Elsa Garmeyer was showing some of the artwork she was creating with lasers in her Caltech lab.
This is an example of the sort of pictures that I was doing when I met Ivan Dreyer and Dale Pelton.
And I approached the professor who had made this art in her laboratory with a couple of lasers, laboratory lasers, and asked for permission to come out and film the things that she was producing on her wall with all of these strange lights and the backscatter from the laser light all over the place. When I first saw the laser come on and saw the intensity of that color and the brightness of it, how exciting it was, I knew right then and there that a film was not going to contain this medium. And it immediately became obvious this was going to have to be presented live with a real laser present.
Well, they decided to film this, and Dale's vision was to make a feature production that had a story and characters and use electronic music. Ivan already knew that this would not work on film, that this was a live medium, and that we needed to use modern music. And he decided just to make a short film using popular music. Ivan's film, Laser Image, was a very avant-garde music video, way before music videos.
Here you could see these organic images changing, the so-called lumia, and then you could have the music, and your mind, with the right kind of music, would just automatically attach concepts to the light and the music. From that, I moved into this idea of the prettiness of it, and that's where the entertainment and the laser light show part came from. Ivan told me that he had been working at Griffith Park on a part-time basis, and wouldn't it be nice to have the laser light show at Griffith Park?
That was the place to put on a laser show, among the stars on the dome of a planetarium.
Elsa, Dale, and I conducted a demonstration at the Griffith Observatory.
We actually took the big laser out and set it up to show how this light show worked. We're so used to big light displays now that it's hard to imagine how impressive this was, because televisions were only yay big at that time. So it was I mean, yes, you could make movies that were that big, but this was lasers emitting very, very sparkly light, and certainly the sparkle came out of these images very impressively.
We had a helium neon laser outfitted with one of Elsa's Lumia wheels and projected undulating laser interference patterns among the stars on the dome.
We did our first performances with classical music.
We put on a classical record. It lasted about 20 minutes. We turned the record over. We sat for another 20 minutes, entranced by what we were seeing.
Laserium began at Griffith Observatory, sort of snuck up on us. There was a proposal by Ivan Dreyer and a few others to bring a show into the planetarium at a time when we wouldn't normally be operating. And it was a show with lasers and music and such, all really quite alien to the planetarium at that time.
Proposed was an untried abstract entertainment. No storyline, no characters, no history, no dice. They essentially said, interesting, but no. We were an outside group with an entertainment program that was incompatible with the observatory's mission. So we went away to try to regroup.
He wasn't going to take no for an answer. He knew he had to do this. That was Ivan. He was very serious about his art. He never listened to anyone else on the way it should be done. He always seemed to know how it should be done.
Ivan, younger than I and California bred, I was New England bred, he got interested in Pink Floyd and rock and roll, and let's speed it up and let's make this something that will entertain people. And this was just not my direction. So I backed out of being involved in laser images at that point and decided that my marriage came first and my career came first.
It seemed nobody believed. Not friends, not venues, and certainly not the banks. There was one friend with a technical background, Charlie McDaniel, who saw some potential and began to work with me as my new partner. So in 1972, we set about building projectors, including 4 small helium neon units for a rock tour with Alice Cooper, the first use of lasers for a rock tour. And this proved to be crucial for the next demo in a laboratory at Caltech in June 1973. We had invited over 100 people and only 2 showed up. But they were Ron Aridi, the Griffith Observatory's astronomical lecturer, and its new director, the late Dr. William Kaufman.
And so in November of 1973, Laserium opened at Griffith Observatory for a very short run, at the times when the observatory would otherwise be closed.
Griffith Observatory was never open on Mondays, so this was a very challenging test.
Well, we brought the show in, not really quite knowing what to expect, and the next thing we knew, we had crowds, we had lines, we had an incredible response that turned what was going to be just a short stint of 4 weeks into something that's over a 10-year relationship.
By the end of our 4 test Monday nights, we turned away about 500 people from our second show, prompting Dr. Kaufman to get us another temporary concession permit.
They had to turn people away. There were so many people that came to those shows. It's like nothing that you've ever seen before.
The hunger for this show was huge, and as a result, the agreement to keep running the program just was extended and extended and extended and extended and extended.
When you were a kid, you must have gone, did you go to the museum all the time?
I did, because I grew up like 5 blocks away, so it was the hangout spot. We would go to Laserium.
The hangout?
I don't remember too much of it, but it was great.
Man, you used to party at the Museum of Natural History.
Pink Floyd, The Wall,
the laser show was...
That was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a Friday night.
Little cough medicine, head over to the...
That's right.
Laser entertainment was a brand new idea in the 70s. Ivan Dreyer saw laser art in the laboratory and brought it out into the public eye.
And basically to Van Nuys, California. This is where it's at. Still here. Very good.
Ivan Dreyer was an amazing individual to be able to put together so many different things that ended up being Laserium. His career in astronomy and at the observatory, combined with his surprise discovery of laser art, putting those things together created Laserium.
I think that people are interested in different kinds of entertainment experiences. Instead of having a story and characters and so forth, the Laserium show is an abstract experience. People really didn't believe that this kind of an entertainment medium would work. And I think if we've proven anything, we've proven that there is a market for abstract entertainment.
Everyone that goes into clubs, everyone nowadays has seen laser beams and laser displays made out of lasers in midair. But Laserium was different. Laserium was projected abstract art. A lot of artists and engineers, technicians, specialists that collaborated on a totally unique art form. Something that really transformed people when they saw it. Something almost indescribable. It was completely unique because of the cosmic setting. It was lights in space. It wasn't a light show. It was objects and colors and patterns floating in space. Everybody got that illusion and were affected by it. People were shocked. They had never seen anything like it. In Laserium 1 was a little red circle getting larger and larger and larger and larger. And you know, in a planetarium dome, that circle wasn't just getting larger, it was literally coming down the curved dome. So it really was coming closer to you. So there's nothing in reality that's like that unless you're in a curved dome.
These effects that the laser could produce, some of them seeming to resemble nebulosity in outer space, had a dynamic quality that was almost impossible to impart through other kinds of techniques prior to that time.
Every art takes technology, whether it's painting, sculpture, music, it all is really technology-based, but what you do with that technology, the technology as a tool, is very, to me, very exciting. And Laserium, in combining both the visual art of the laser and the auditory art in the form of the music, created something together that was much more powerful than either of the two things separately. So it was a real synergy when you take those two things together.
So the components of a laser show, geometric shapes, the line art things, the very solid spirals that hypnotized people, you know, drew them in to the color and the light itself, was like nothing else. And it's like nothing else. Beatles story. We got the first Beatles music license ever. So we go to Capitol Records in Hollywood and they're pulling tapes off the shelf, literally the masters, and dusting it off and transferring it to tape for us. The tapes that every American heard as Beatles music that we were able to put in our shows.
This kind of entertainment actually did begin here. No one had the notion when it started that we would ever become pioneers and partners in pioneering a new form of entertainment. And it's not the kind of thing a planetarium necessarily does. But that's exactly what did happen. And I think all of us enjoy the notion that something like this actually is a part of the 50-year history of Griffith Observatory.
Laserium opened, obviously, at Griffith Observatory, which was a wonderful venue, being in Los Angeles, being an iconic planetarium. The next planetarium that they opened in was Denver, which was a much smaller planetarium, but they met their first publicity director, and he was the guy who came up with how to market Laserium.
Come journey with me to a new world of entertainment, to Laserium, the cosmic laser concert, where over 3 million Earthlings have traveled. Laserium, a fantastic voyage into live laser illusions and surround sound. Laserium, beam aboard tonight.
We couldn't afford an ad agency, so we created our own radio, TV, and print ads. Among my favorites was a series of wonderful testimonial radio spots. One ended with a gruff-sounding woman complaining, "It was terrible. Some psychedelic nut went on a trip." I don't know how many times people said, if she felt that way, I just had to see this show.
We developed so many different shows, like Laser Rock, which was our first all-rock music show. Our main shows were Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and Pink Floyd.
A lot of crazy things would go on in there. And then all of a sudden, this guy just stands up in the middle of the planetarium, pointing up at the top of the dome, and he's going like, "I see God, I see God," and he wouldn't shut up. And you know, and as the laserist, I have like this responsibility to keep the show must go on. You know,
a lot of weird stuff would go on during these shows. You know, people having sex in the seats. I remember seeing that kind of thing. Yeah, at Griffith.
I've had people have sex during my shows at Griffith.
I mean,
they had those big curtains, you know, that were hanging down by the exit doors. There'd be somebody behind there, you know.
After the show, people would come up, and a handful of them from time to time, and ask questions about how it works. I was performing a classical show. It was a matinee. There was a woman that came up, and she had waited her turn. She was the last one, and a small boy standing behind her. She explained that her son was deaf, and he never knew what music was. He didn't comprehend music. He finally saw what music could be in all these different textures and tones through laser light and laserium. And it obviously touched me to be able to share that with another person. It's never left me. But I think that's the goal of what laserists do to begin with, is that you're telling this story, or you're a part of that music that you're listening to, and you're bringing it to a visual world.
It brought tears to my son-in-law's eyes, because he thought that was such a beautiful way to express his work, you know, to be able to see music.
We've had people in their 70s and 80s come to our rock shows, people who don't like rock music, who enjoy it for the first time because they see it in a different dimension. They literally see the music for the first time.
I said, "Ivan, I had this idea I thought you'd enjoy, that you'd hook up the audience to an EEG while they're watching the show." And he said, "I did that! Not to the audience, but to myself." He said, "My favorite thing that we've ever done was Awaken by Yes, and so I had an EEG done listening to the music, and then I had an EEG done watching the imagery, and then I had one done listening and watching the imagery, and my theta wave went through the roof," and I had no idea what that was, but he was so gleeful about it. And so I looked it up on Wikipedia, and apparently it has something to do with directed meditation. And in a lot of the numbers, especially something like Awaken, you're trying to mesmerize the audience. There's this zone that you're trying to get them into, and yourself for that matter.
The 4K TV can never capture it, film will never capture it. You have to experience the grandeur and the size of a real laser show. The laser show at the concerts aren't the same thing, because you need to be in a planetarium environment where you're taken off the planet. You're just stripped away of your cars and your cell phones and your TVs, your laptops, your tablets, and you're going to go out into space. You can shut the lights off and you just fade away into the beam. You just watch it dance inside your brain, because that's where the magic is. It's in your brain, but most people don't see it. So go see some magic laser shows. Shut your tablet off.
I got hired in as Ivan's secretary. When I was there, we were in Los Angeles, Denver, Seattle, Toronto, New York, and things were booming.
When they opened in New York, someone told me that they were still wiring the optical head on the plane on the way to New York. They were expanding incredibly quickly for the first 5 to 10 years.
I did about 20 years of those laser shows. Who would have thought that I would have had that kind of opportunity, or it would have lasted that long? And I think it lasted that long mainly because of the creative genius down in LA and our enthusiastic audiences here in San Francisco, which is kind of a city that is very accepting of these things that combine science and art.
When Laserium went to London in 1976, they were all ready, setting up the show, big advertisement, everyone's excited, the country's ready for Laserium. 2 days before the show, Pink Floyd calls and says, you can't use Pink Floyd music without the approval of the band. So what happened is Roger Waters came down and got a personal show, gave the thumbs up. After that, London loved Laserium. It ran for over 10 years. The shows were in a building that was attached to Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. And the laserists would go in there and they would smoke hash out of Winston Churchill's actual pipe.
In the mid-70s, Laserium was exploding into theaters all over the world. We were sending projectors to Tokyo.
We have been in about 45 cities around the world. And at one time or another, we've been in 17 cities simultaneously.
We thought we'd do a show on a weekly basis, maybe 2-4 shows a week, and invite some people in and have them come and enjoy themselves and have a kind of a modest cottage industry for ourselves, but never had any inkling that it would expand worldwide.
Laserium got so big all over the world that at some point 20 million tickets were sold. Think about that. 20 million people saw a Laserium show. Tangerine Dream visited LA and they went to see Laserium at Griffith Park Observatory and they were blown away. They loved it and they approached us and said, we gotta have you on tour, you gotta do this with us. They took Laserium on tour in 1978 and Laserium became huge in Europe and Tangerine Dream became huge in the US. And after that, they came out with a live album, a double live album, and they put all these wonderful Laserium images all over it.
Doing all of the planetarium shows is fun. Going out with a big band like Rush and going on tour is another level of excitement to go with.
I went to Rush's management team. Tom Berry was at the actual studios. And I asked him if he'd like to do laser show with laser images, introducing the Rush material.
I got my platinum album from the tour, which was a bonus I hadn't really expected to see, but Rush treats their crew like family.
At that point, Rush was releasing a new album. I drafted up a rough mix and presented it to Tom Berry.
That was quite a time. Had a lot of fun together. Yeah, one story I can tell you was I used to like to play tricks when we were on the road. We were in the South, maybe Tennessee, Kentucky, and the green room was a country thing. Hay bales, barbecue, whatnot, they tell me. There's a horse outfit. Well, you don't say. So I run downstairs, grab the horse outfit, take it up, tell the stage manager that I'm going on stage tonight with the band. And I tell him what I'm gonna do, and sure enough, here I go. We go out on stage, and I can't see where I'm going. Do a little jig, come back off. The next thing I feel is somebody grabbing my chest and pulling us off stage. Everybody's laughing. And we'll just leave it at that.
We also expanded into practical effects for film and television. Before there was CGI, there was Laserium.
More calling Orson. Come in, Orson.
More calling Orson. Come in, Orson.
We got speed.
Herbie Hancock's new video combines the driving beat of his song Vibe Alive with stunning visuals created by 2 computer-controlled laser beams.
I want to just do a video that's going to be dynamic. The laser beam goes through and it gives it a 3-dimensional effect.
Everything had to be 3D back then, and Laserium was no exception.
Laser rock in 3D. The newest technology in lasers has come to Griffith Observatory's Laserium. Our Jody Ross takes us to the show that's both art and science.
Laser rock 3D is a total experience, but you have to see it live. It's about sitting in the seat, listening to the music, wearing the 3D glasses. These are what bring the laser images to life.
We've been doing Laserium shows here since 1973, and now we finally added a new dimension.
Colors, like they just come straight at you. It's freaky.
It was so good. You gotta come out.
It would be great under mind-altering drugs, I think.
And you're sober?
I am sober, yeah. I still enjoyed it.
We used to do record release parties. We did Broken Bells, Kate Bush, Soundgarden, Linkin Park.
No matter where you turn, and the walls will fall, affirming nothing. So what's it all about? Cause everyone is right.
And laser companies started popping up all over the world, and they would form associations such as ILDA, which stands for International Laser Display Association.
ILDA is an association that is made up of people who produce laser light shows and people who manufacture the equipment and the software that's used in laser light shows. Ivan Dreyer is officially the father of the laser light show industry. Ivan received the very first Career Achievement Award from ILDA. Oh, look at that. 43 ILDA awards, and his company, Laser Images, won 43 ILDA awards from 1988 to 2000 when they were members for artistic excellence and for technical achievement. That's why he's venerated within ILDA as the father of the laser light show industry, and why last year we dedicated March 7th, his birthday, every year as International Laserist Day in his honor.
Ivan's educated people, he's entertained people, he showed people technology. People didn't even know what a laser was.
He was very generous with his time and the things that he loved. He would show up with yogurt and bagels and whatnot while we were trying to keep everything together. Very passionate about Laserium, and he poured his life into it.
Ivan Dreyer and Laser Images invented the idea of using lasers in entertainment venues.
Laserium became part of the cultural fabric. It became part of television.
Because what's down here underground. And judging by that funky sound and the megawatt light show, something's going on behind that door, and it's not Laserium.
All right, free Laserium. All the colors of the bow, man. Ow! Oh.
Sooner or later, every guy gets hustled.
Even you?
Even me. I remember once when I wasn't much older than you, I spent $100 on a bag of oregano.
Oregano?
Your uncle was making spaghetti sauce.
Yeah, in a parked car before I went to the Pink Floyd Laserium show.
They're all aliens worshiping their false gods. Put your head back and it just starts and the lights all go off and the stars go on.
It's just
kinda,
wow, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, your whole mood changes. It's like...
I see this becoming a dominant form of the entertainment that will be consumed in the future. You'll have your compact video disc, which will have audio and video. It'll be digitally encoded. You'll have your home entertainment center, where you will sit back and be bathed in surround sound and have a light show in your own home. When that happens, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get people out of their houses for conventional kinds of entertainment, because they'll have video, they'll have audio, they'll have all the things at home that they now have to go out for.
In many ways, Ivan was a visionary. Way before he even started Laserium, he started to think about multimedia presentations in a space where maybe there'd be movies and maybe there would be symphony performances. He envisioned a complex, maybe a city block, that put together all of these forms of entertainment.
We think really that the future is in the combination of all of these media, lasers and computer images and film. Producing shows very different from any that are produced now. In very spectacular environments, large theaters built especially for the purpose, where people can have an experience that they can't reproduce, even with all the technology that they have at home. I think they're going to replace the theaters that we now go to for movies, and lasers, of course, will be a part of that.
Very early on in the late 60s, he said something that at the time I didn't understand and didn't see how that was possible. But he said that, you know, someday the radio, the television, the movies, any kind of visual communication, any kind of audio communication that you can think of will be held in your hand, and you'll be able to do it all with one device. It's pretty amazing that he was able to stand on a little bit higher box and see a little over the horizon than a lot of the rest of us.
People will have more involvement in the entertainment experience. They'll become creative along with the artists who present it. Eventually, pure light will become an art form all by itself. And it may be that fine artists in the future will use lasers to create their works rather than paint or sculpture. They will use lasers to create architectural spaces that people move through, just in the space of the environment.
Every show is different because each show is live. So what you have is a kind of a basic arrangement like in jazz, but each performer has the ability to improvise on that basic arrangement. And the shows grow a lot over time. That's one reason why, even though we could go to a canned show all on tape, we've chosen not to because of that live element. And the audience plays a very large part in creating the experience because their reaction feeds back to the performer then incorporates the things that they like.
The Laserium is a very participatory experience. It's a live show. We are sitting there and actually manipulating the controls, but we're also feeding off of the audience at the same time. So you might do something at the panel and you'll hear the audience respond. And that kind of feedback helps you really perfect the show as you perform it. So in my opinion, the show gets better and better and better. Well, how many jobs does anyone ever have where you actually, people are applauding for you. That doesn't happen very often. But that's really kind of exciting to be able to have a live audience feeding back at you.
That was the beauty of it, you know, because it was very, very live. You'd have like a basic outline, but every night it's going to be different, you know, because you'd get a tangent and you'd start exploring that way. And then you come the next night and there's a different person doing it and they've got a whole different look and they'll put different optics on the projector, you know, and things would break and then you compensate. And so
that's when you got your most creative.
That's
like,
that's
oh my
the
God,
real
what do I
test.
have left to work with?
Oh my God,
because I can't do what I was planning on doing.
You're sweating.
A laserist should have a combination of technical skills, especially electronics, and performance ability, so that he or she can perform in front of an audience here of 600 people, and at the same time be able to fix the equipment when it breaks down.
You learn to think really quick. Things go wrong, it could be this, could be that, could be this, could be that, could be that. You're doing a show one-handed and you're back here trying to fix that, and you're just, you know, you're trying to like, yeah, I mean, you know, you'd blow a fuse and you'd lose an axis and you'd change it in the show. And, you know, you learn to think quick.
That's probably like the greatest asset of a laserist is that ability.
Part of the challenge is using what you have.
It's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have.
Sometimes it'll be just scribbling around up there and the audience just goes crazy. And you go, no, you want to say, no, that's not good. That's not what I wanted up there. But it's kind of fun to hear that feedback from the audience. So sometimes scribbling is good.
You just start going like, okay, I'm going to just start using this other thing that I already used in show in a different way to try to make it look different. And you're just like banging on it, you know, because it's the finale, so you're trying to like make it all flashy and whatever. And afterwards, people came up to me like, we never saw you do that before. What did you do? But you're doing it so fast in the moment. You're like going, well, what the hell did I do?
It's working.
I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to like do it again.
Yeah.
And so you try to recreate it and you never like get it exactly the same. But I think that's kind of like the magic of performance art.
Yeah.
Is, you know, sometimes you have those magical moments that are only going to be experienced in that moment in time with those people that were in that room when it happened.
It's never going to happen like that again.
And one day a fly ventured onto our Lumia wheel and proceeded to crawl all over it. While this was going on down at the projector, up on the dome was the shadow of this enormous insect strolling among the stars and Lumia effects on the dome. The audience went crazy at that. It was too bad we couldn't hire the fly.
I remember just in the other room here, we were getting ready to do a demo for the Olympic Committee. And I'd misaligned some lenses and it was a 20-watt laser beam coming to this infinitesimal focus about a foot from the lens. And Craig Spraderman ran his finger through that focus. And this puff of smoke came as the oil was burnt off of his fingertip. And he just looked at me and he tried to do it 5 or 10 more times. It never hit the focus just perfectly that he did the first time. And so we're a little crazy, I guess.
For 10 years, I tried to explain to my parents what it was that I did for a living without much success. But once they came and saw one of the shows and I had a chance to explain things to them, while I don't think they ever truly understood the depth of what's involved in performing a Laserium show.
All right. Get this rocking. Open the drain. Slowly ratchet up the water. Check 2 voltage. Start the laser. And we'll switch it over to current. Wait for our spike. What happens is the tube charges up and all the photons being excited by all that plasma getting jacked up by all the juice that's going through there starts doing its, well, you know, light orgasm basically. I mean, light is laser light. Laser light, you know, is an orgasm. I mean, basically because it's just getting so excited that it can't stand anymore and it just kapow.
A laser is a beam of very organized, coherent light. And we take that beam, in this case from a krypton gas laser, for all you Superman fans out there. Now, a krypton laser has 4 different colors, red, yellow, green, and blue. Use a prism to make those 4 colors. We then send those various beams, the 4 beams that come out of the prism, into different areas in the projection system.
You have the beam from the krypton laser coming in through here, and then it can go in a variety of different directions once it gets in here. The beam can come all the way through the projector and then go to the Lumia section. This is one section that bolts on top of here.
Beams go to what are called scanners. These are very fast mirrors vibrating that move the laser beam back and forth.
The beam can also continue to come through to the scanners here. So there are 4 different XY scanners with scan glasses that can be popped up in front of the scanners for different effects. This is a fiber optic turret. Let me see, hold on a second. This panel goes over this projector. What happens is the beams can be sent through this disc that's being focused onto a fiber optic bundle. And then this motor can move that fiber optic bundle in and out, basically focusing it. A lot of these effects for the fiber bundle involve lenses of one sort or another, or a mosaic of lenses. My favorite optical effect is this one. It's called a dimple tube. It's just a piece of plexiglass where you've pressed dimples into it. It creates this diffraction pattern like a wave breaking. I had a guy that I know that worked for a different laser company that used to visit me, and he commented specifically on that effect, and decades later I ran into him and he said, "And you called it the dimple tube, and I wasn't sure whether that was a mistake or whether you were just throwing me a bone." He went back to his shop and started experimenting with tubes and what he could do with them. Mostly, it's about playing, it's about experimenting, it's about what happens if I stick this piece of whatever into a laser beam. Richard Goulet was our optics guy when I was here, and Richard would go to junk shops with a little laser and he would see what would look interesting, and he'd bring it back and he'd make moldings and he'd make these wheels that would do different things. This particular wheel was for Danube, and it's a Duco cement that Charlie McDaniel used to make in his garage. It was top secret how you'd get the bubbles into the cement.
A lot of the effects were molded off silicone rubber. We took it off an original piece and then duplicated it. And then from there we could manipulate it with other optical effects by combining 2 pieces together. This is a raster wheel that I built for the Beatles show. We also had effects where these would come in front of the scanners, which was a moving dot. It would diffract the image as we needed it. The effects are all here. They're just tons and tons of history. These are just little pieces of plastic which you showed through the laser beam what a little moving dot could do. It entertained people for hours. But now we have $1 million movies where you can entertain them, but it's all junk.
Our projector is really a light synthesizer. In fact, we use the same kinds of oscillators that are used in music synthesizers. Those oscillators control the motions of the mirrors. So if you could hear the tones that are actually creating those images, you could create music that the projector was making.
This is a red laser dot. I've selected one of the colors of the laser, and we're putting it through an oscillator, which is an electronic device that creates circles. Right now I have a very slow circle called up, and as you increase the frequency of the oscillator through the retention of your eye, it's your eye remembering where the dot was last. Your eye is completing the circle. So after you've got your 4 separate colors, you can do all sorts of different things.
It's all done with mirrors. It's a pair of mirrors, one vibrating in one direction. The beam bounces off of it, it creates a line, and then that line goes to the other set of other mirrors, which are bouncing back and forth, creating a circle or some more complex image.
These are the digital cycloids, and with the digital cycloids, these are the amplitude controls. These are symmetry. I can make them squish one way or the other. Master shutter, which should have been off. Then we have joystick overrides, cycloid overrides, motors, motor speeds.
It's amazing because nothing ever had a label on it.
One of the first things that I thought when I saw the machine was, why didn't they put any numbers on this?
And that was just the way it was. Because you didn't have time to look. You know, you play by feel.
It needs to be played like an instrument.
And it's a trip because I can still have dreams playing these things. It's amazing.
There are like 100 knobs and switches and dials on the very complex control console.
I started learning it like playing a guitar. Where do your fingers go? How many times do you turn this one to the left and that one to the right and push that button in or out? Or any combination of those things, then look what it does, which is incredible what it can do.
You know, because you get really hooked on it. I mean, doing the shows was completely addictive. It was so much fun.
Unfortunately, there were machines that were in what we called the boneyard, which was a storage area. And these were machines that were around the world at one time in other planetariums. And now they're collecting dust, which was sad to see them, because being a part of it, you know what that machine is capable of doing and how you, in the right hands, can be a powerful instrument of entertainment.
So these are the carcasses, the 6P carcasses. This is it. So glad it's still here. I remember there were times they were talking about throwing it out. And like, don't throw anything out. A lot of good memories here. A lot of good people. A lot of people, good people came in and out of here. And some not so good people. No, I shouldn't say that. This is like the old engineering room. This is where a guy named Dave used to be in here, and I'd always come in here when I needed some kind of weird bolt or screw or something. And this is a lot of, you know, repairs and things like this. And you see these cables, you know, this wire. These wires have probably been here for 30 years.
When I was younger, I had seen Laserium many, many times. And I'd always thought to myself, I'd give my left arm just to play with the machine. A lot of it was taking things that we invented in the shop in a very kludged manner and making it into an actual unit that was placeable on one of the projectors. I mean, it's one thing to make an effect on a table with things positioned, but to make it into a small little effect took a little doing. Putting a scanner and a prism and mirrors and everything into a tiny little box, it can get complicated.
This old rack, I remember this. This is my handwriting here and here. We used this in Laughlin, Nevada. And these things were the names of our sets. And this is like one of the original 6B consoles. I just want to open this up and see, yeah, this is great. This is the 6B console again. There's a couple of them here, and this one's got all its knobs. It looks pretty good. This was more of an analog area, and this was digital up here. You can take this spiral and make it fast and real tight or loose, and you could put a scan glass in front of it and make it look trippy and weird and make it swim. You can make it swim toward the audience. This is like a beam torquer here, I believe, where you could take the color, take mirrors and bend them so you can go through the whole spectrum of colors. For me, it was like traveling through space, because you were in the dome was the best way to see Laserium. That's the way it was intended. You'd start, it would go black and the stars would come out, and then it was like going on a journey through space using this as your vehicle, and you're putting up different colors and everything with this song, and then the next song comes out and you're in another part of space and it's got a new look, and that's what this thing did.
Yeah, it draws quite a crowd.
We don't have the...
Are you using a 6B?
No, we don't. We're on this system right now. We don't have a 6B, but we have like the St. Louis system.
There's a working one.
Yeah, right in there.
Really?
In surgery. Yeah.
Why don't you hook it up?
It's hooked up.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we.
This
can
is
get
the 20th century instrument that died in the 21st. Well, it didn't die. I shouldn't say that. It's just.
Well, the thing is,
got phased out.
It's only.
This one looks good. This is in good condition. They were always, usually they were scratched up and drool marks on them. It's, you know, I'm glad to see this working, you know. It's like if people stopped making banjos, you know.
Or Stradivarius.
Imagine the world without a banjo or a Stradivarius.
Yeah.
A 6B.
There's just so much you could do to really, really make these shows just like, you know, everyone, every time walks out, you know, like, oh my God, my mind is blown. You can do that. And that's what they used to do, you know. That's what the master laserists, you know, achieved.
Laserium had something that I think no one else had, which was an aesthetic for how to put together a show.
The Laserium shows are a result of a lot of people's hard work, and they would take a lot of time.
Not just throwing together a bunch of music and throwing together a bunch of imagery, but also thinking about how that music fit together and how the images fit with the music.
And the way it would start is we'd get the soundtrack, and you'd get the right songs, and you put them in the right order and get opinions on them. We'd sit there for days and go make these song lists and put it on a cassette tape and listen to it and re-listen to it, and they go, now let's switch those songs, let's pull that song.
Once they've selected it, then they select the images to go with the music and create the structure of the show. And that's almost as important as the individual selection, how it flows from one number to the next, the dynamics of it.
So there was a real effort to create a choreography that went with the music.
It's obviously something that they've been doing with passion for over 40 years here. You feel the love of the music in what they're doing.
It renews the music for you. These songs you've heard a billion times, there's a whole new experience to them. Something you can't get anywhere else. And
there's more there to say.
Learning to appreciate music, especially after listening to it several hundred times, was kind of an interesting thing that happened. As a laserist, you got to really dive deeply into how music was constructed. So that was an interesting part of being a laserist, was really careful, deep listening.
And then plotting out how we want to get the different laser looks for each song and each part of the song. And we would make a data track, and this goes with the music. This data also will control certain mechanics in the projector, like putting a scan glass up at a certain time. But all this can be changed by the laserist.
It was a unique proprietary system that's quite a bit like animatronics. In other words, we used an audio track to control hundreds of mechanical devices in our projectors.
And we would put down basically dots, laser dots. And then the laserist will take it and make it their own show. They will shape that dot into some kind of a spiral or laser look.
If I just sat here and watched what was the basic choreography, what happens from tape control, it would be an extremely boring show. And so I have to get in practice to elaborate upon that basic choreography.
And without that basic track, it would take about 10 people to do the show, or someone with 1 million arms. So that track is made by 2 people or 3 people in the studio, and that allows one person to do the show. This is what we would make shows with, this and this together. You'd set up your look, and you have all these things, and you plug it here and there, so this one's working that and this and that, like an old synthesizer, like a Moog synthesizer.
Yeah.
And you're playing it real time to the music, and it would be like 2 guys usually, 2 people.
Yeah.
That's where we really get to be playing on the beat. And that allows the laserist to kind of maybe concentrate on colors or a different instrument. A lot of times, you know, we'd play on the drums in the studio, and then live you might play with the bass or a melody. like punching music. You could do like a verse at a time. You're like, how'd you do? Good? I suck. Let's do it again. Okay, so that type of thing. And it was funny. You work your way through a show, and that's how we would make the outline. So that gives it a huge feel, and it feels like there's a bunch of people back there playing it when it's only one, but prior to that, there were a bunch of people. But because of that basic track, it allows the lasers to get very creative. And then Scott and whoever else was working with him, myself or whatever, would make these like little scripts for the laserists, and we'd send that with a videotape. Sometimes they'd come in and we'd train them.
You were giving your sheet from Scott. Or
right.
Whoever,
we'd make these
like,
things, we call them pin sheets.
Yeah, pin sheets. And then the sheet, there might be even one around somewhere.
I know. Here's one,
but,
right here.
Okay, yeah. See,
look at this.
Yeah, so you'd get one of these pin sheets.
This is the Aerosmith show, and this shows how the scan glasses should be set up. This represents the scan glasses, and these are the wheels, Lumia wheels. And some of them will be like, okay, and they'd study and practice, and then others will be like, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And just put it away, and they're
And
like, okay, I'll do what I'm gonna do. These are the songs, great.
My favorite thing to do is play with crystals and laser light. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I remember coming here every weekend with my dad when I was just a little girl, about 5, 6, and in the booth where he plays the shows, I would have my little bed set up. Just listening to him and watching him play the shows, you know, and have had that connection my whole life. I feel like a laser child.
The Griffith Observatory is getting a makeover, and it will take a while, as in 3 years. Scientists have been watching outer space from the observatory for the last 66 years, but tomorrow night, the observatory will be closed for renovation.
Well, we knew for years that the Griffith Park Observatory was going to be closing for renovation. They were just trying to raise enough money, and it just seemed like it was never going to happen. But it did, and I'll never forget the day we got the call. It was kind of frightening, because we're like, where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? So at this point, Griffith Park was the only theater Laserium was happening at, so it was the original, the first one, and it was going to be the last one. And we just kind of were ready for it to end.
I remember my dad contacting me and saying they're doing construction on Griffith. They're gonna stop doing the laser shows. After they do all the remodeling, it's not going back.
You know, next 3 years, you're not going to be going, wow, Pink Floyd, look at the laser lights.
You are really working
The Laser Floyd show, baby. Every year for the last 20 years, Dark Side of the Moon.
What a night. Several thousand people came to Griffith Observatory tonight. On Sunday, this place will be shutting down for 3 years, and the big crowd wanted a last look.
Frankly, it's just worn out. The planetarium projector, the star projector in the theater, has been there since 1964. The seats violate the Geneva Convention. They're the most uncomfortable seats in the Milky Way galaxy.
What a popular show. The crowds have been great.
Yes, they have. They've been this way for 28 years.
All this will mean saying goodbye to the observatory and the 28-year running Laserium show.
It's very nostalgic and bittersweet for me, having spent a good portion of my life here.
Shows at the observatory have been sold out. The crowds coming to say so long for now.
The reality that we wouldn't be back at Griffith Park was pretty sad and very depressing. After 30 years, selling out shows, bringing all those people to the observatory, we weren't invited back.
The work to keep all those special effects going, and then the planetariums didn't like it because you had to add more power and you had to renegotiate, and they didn't like to renegotiate.
You know, they thought we brought in a bad element. They wanted the observatory to be a place of science, and people were going up there to have fun and enjoy music and see art and smoke pot. They didn't like it.
Laser images was treated like the stepchild that should be hidden in a closet, brought out at night and hidden during the day.
The president of the Science Center in St. Louis said he wanted to raise the attendance at the planetarium, and I said, well, you should bring back Laserium. It was the most successful planetarium show of all time. He had no idea what I was talking about. Their charitable guy, Pat Williams, was there and said, there's not a day that goes by that somebody doesn't ask me about that show. And this is a show that had closed 30 years prior to that in St. Louis.
Over the next decade, there were several revivals in several cities, and they did great. People were ready to see Laserium again, and they were selling out. Everyone's happy. The contracts would run out, and they weren't invited back. Laserium would put on shows at different venues outside of planetariums, and they'd still have people lined up around the block. We did a show called Art in Nature in Laguna Beach, where lasers were safely projected over people where they were bathed in light, and they became the canvas. We did a piece with performance artist Yana Clark, and she usually works with natural light. When we put the lasers on her reflective bodysuit, it created something we had never seen before. The industry was changing, and Ivan was also having some new challenges. He was very dedicated to his wife, and she fell ill. And he became her primary caregiver and really took care of her and was very dedicated to her. And I really respect that about him. The love for his wife came first. As a result, his health started declining. And this all prevented him from being, forefront in this whole journey with the lasers.
The marketplace kept changing. They stole the technology, but the technology lived here and actually was born in Van Nuys, in California. A moment in history which will never be duplicated.
Laserium Studios in Van Nuys were there for 42 years. This is where all the shows were made, and at the end, shows were being performed there.
Hello, Laserium.
Hey, got those Sour Patch Kids? I've already seen Led Zeppelin, I believe, 13 times. And I've seen Pink Floyd 11, which is a total of 24. I just saw the Beatles for the 4th time, which makes 28.
My mother came in high school, so maybe it was in my genetics.
4 times a U2 makes 32.
When I die, I hope my heaven looks like laser fluid.
3 times to 9 Inch Nails makes 35.
Since I Googled it, I was like, I'm gonna see every single show.
The most I've seen in one night is 3.
And I've seen every single show.
And I've done that twice, but I've never stayed for all 4.
Things got disrupted from the way I had it. I had everything working and in good shape, and then everybody had to start sticking their finger in it and fucking it up.
Welcome to Laserium's Van Nuys Studios. This is really kind of the mothership. This is where we've been since 1974. This is
1974
since 1974. This is the crib.
Incredible.
So a lot of magic has really taken place in this room and the whole complex we had at one point. One of Madonna's first videos was shot in here. We had major motion picture effects that have been shot in here, Star Trek and so forth. So you guys already met your laserist, Danny Nielsen, who's right there in the back.
This is my first time at the Laserium Laserium. The show that I saw was 9 Inch Nails.
I'm not a 9 Inch Nails fan at all, but I've enjoyed seeing the 9 Inch Nails show, I think 3 times.
There's so much going on in my head right now. I'm still processing it all.
This was all around you, was coming at you.
I felt like I was tripping. I mean, that's what I heard. I heard that that's what you feel like.
It's like almost being in outer space.
There's nothing compared to lasers, like just the pure color of it and like the energy of it too. There's just nothing else like it in the world.
Out here at this historic location was just amazing, and we're just really lucky to be able to see this in 2016. It's just incredible that it's still going on.
I was a little nervous about coming to this area because there are some parts of Van Nuys that can be a little dangerous.
You know, we're referring to it as a hidden gem of Los Angeles, and just like, why is it hidden? Why is this place hidden?
Perks of being a laserist.
I think it's something that needs to stay around, needs to be in the world. People need to be forced to slow down and listen to stuff and see stuff, see the music.
Is there all this laser now in my heart with the melodies and like the music and truly amazing.
Thank you, laser gods.
Yeah, it's just pretty magical.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big date night thing.
Yeah. I've had several people come back since we've been doing shows, even up in Oakland, here even in the studio, and they come back for like an anniversary because it was like their first date or something. And they come back to celebrate their anniversary to come and see a Laserium show like they did on their very first date.
Yeah.
It has happened with so many different couples. It's like, you're just like going, wow.
That's great.
We've really like touched a lot of people. Shall we do the Dr. Pepper commercial?
And finally, we had to move out of there and find a place for all the stuff. So Griffith Park's closed, and now the studio's closed. Danny's last day at the original studios. He performs his last Dark Side of the Moon show.
You guys already met your laserist, Danny Nielsen. He's right there in the back.
One of the things that would get talked about is how Laserium was an enigma of the universe, and that this building, you know, was in some way holding everything together, and that if it ever went away, that, you know, the whole universe was going to implode or something. If they turn the lasers off here, it's going to be the end of the world as we know it.
Well, that's it.
So his health was declining, and Carol's health was declining, and that was the beginning of the end. And it was almost a year to the day after Carol's death that Ivan passed away in July of 2017.
Yeah, we competed against, you know, Laserium, but it was 1977.
You were friendly competitors?
Yes, we were.
This is the guy that brought lasers out of the laboratory and into the world for everybody. Every rave, every concert, everything owes it to this guy.
On top of all that, he was a creative genius and visionary who enriched the entire world forever. And it doesn't get much better than that.
Every show was individual, unique, and special. That was my brother.
I would love when Ivan and Carol would come up to see shows. It was a special night because it was his baby. He just gave me the keys to drive it, and boy, did I love driving it.
I loved working there. It was the greatest time I've ever had working in my life.
It was one of the best times of my life. It was a blast.
Best job I've ever had.
Best job I ever had. Society's changing, people are changing, the attention span is changing. So people aren't gonna sit in a planetarium and watch 50 minutes of nothing but lasers.
Laser light shows today are very different from in Ivan's time. In the last 10 years or so, there's been a real shift in our laser industry, both technological and with the audience.
The attention span's shorter, that's why you don't even hear a whole song in a club. A DJ will play 10 seconds of a song and then go on to the next song.
And technologically, the laser equipment that was $25,000, $50,000 in Ivan's time that needed water cooling and three-phase, now you can just go on eBay and you can buy a little laser projector about the size of a bread box, full color, multi-watt, plug in a little card and do 100 pre-done shows. It's made it easier, but of course there's a quality loss with that. When you can get, a home laser light show for $20, it's a little bit different than when Ivan started out.
It's a joke. If you're coming from the planetarium and you walk into a room and see this, it's kind of depressing, no heart and soul. But, it's a stocking stuffer.
Artistically, I think it's a very exciting time for laser shows now. For many years, if you went to a concert, there would be two lasers, one on either side, maybe a third one in the back, and they're all coming from the same point and they're all moving around, but it's a single point source. Now, however, lasers are so cheap that you can take dozens of them or hundreds of them. Now you have fans, arrays, walls of laser light, so that we're getting an entirely new look. The world's record for a laser light show is 314 different lasers. It was done by a company called ER Productions. I don't think there were 314 laser light show type lasers back in Ivan's day. And here they had 314 at one show.
One thing that differentiates Laserium from a lot of stuff you might see today is that a lot of the shows today are completely programmed. So you press the play button and you can walk away and the show will play just fine. Laserium was not like that.
It's hard to do choreography with the software that's available today. You're not doing it live, so what you see is something where the imagery is running at the same tempo as the music, but it's not really choreographed to the music. It doesn't have that same effect. It doesn't have that art that Ivan was, saw in his mind's eye the first time he saw a laser effect and spent the rest of his life trying to bring to fruition.
It's been said that you should never be first in business, that you should let someone else be first, let them make the mistakes, learn from them, and then go forward. Well, we certainly did make a lot of mistakes, but I have never regretted being first.
feels just like I'm floating. You're golden, true colors really showing. Floating, it feels just like I'm floating. You've opened up my eyes to see the ocean. It's glowing, and I can't wait to jump right in the deep blue we can swim, 'cause it could never die. You and I will live on forever. Guided by the light, oh by the light. Guided by the light, oh by the light. Yeah, here we go. La 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 la, la 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 la. 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 Flow. feels just like I'm floating. Floating. It feels just like I'm floating.